This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome. We're back in the Stone Zone. Joining me now is Lee Smith. Lee Smith is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Plot Against the President, which also became an incredible documentary. He's written a number of other books, but his most disturbing book is his latest book, Disappearing the President. I guess because what we see unfolding in Los Angeles is foretold in this book. Lee Smith essentially says, even before a would-be killer tried to murder President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, a clique of political assassins set about eliminating him from public life entirely. In his new book, Disappearing the President, Lee Smith exposes how a shadow network of powerful partisan activists has waged a year-long scorched earth war to eradicate President Trump and any vestige of his influence, resorting to an unprecedented campaign of domestic spying, election rigging, brute force censorship, and political violence. These Trump zealots appear to be at it again in Los Angeles. This appears to be spreading to New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Atlanta. Lee Smith, thank you so much for joining us in the Stone Zone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roger. Always nice to speak with you.
So lay this out for us, because your book really does seem prescient. I thought at the time this was mostly groundbreaking. I knew parts of this, not all of it, but you clearly foresaw all of this.
Well, one of the things that tips it off are the people who are involved, the people who've been talking about this since at least January 2024. What was interesting was that even back then, they'd anticipated or gamed out the possibility of a Trump victory in November 2024. And so they reasoned that since the deportation operation was going to be so big on Trump's agenda, that this was also a place where they could attack Trump. And the way that they would attack Donald Trump is what we're seeing today. The first part is to get people out on the street, and there's many other people who have covered this, who have said who are the people who are involved, who are paying to put people on the streets, and that would prompt the president to call out National Guard units as well as regular military units. And that's what we're seeing in Los Angeles. Then the design is to have people inside the Pentagon object to Trump's moves, and that will split the Pentagon and presumably split the armed forces and destabilize the American government. The people in there, the people who are involved, who are behind this, are some familiar names, including a man named Mark Elias, who was formerly a lawyer at Perkins Coie, and he was the person who essentially funded the Steele dossier. Another one of these people is a woman named Rosa Brooks, who was an Obama Pentagon official, and she was behind the Transition Integrity Project, which basically gamed out the election irregularities and what that would lead to, including not just the election, but the aftermath, where Trump supporters would be rolled up. And then another person is someone, Roger, I suspect that your audience that will know her name too. That name is Mary McCord, and she was a Justice Department official, and she was lead on this unlawful investigation of Donald Trump, the Russia collusion probe. After that, McCord has worked in a variety of places, including, I believe that she worked for Adam Schiff for a brief period, and then she was on the January 6th committee attacking, impoverishing and imprisoning Trump supporters, or helping to impoverish and imprison Trump supporters. So all these names are pretty well known to people, and these are the same people who have been writing about this, the same people who have been wargaming this. And what I mean about wargaming, they've been wargaming these protests, how they would spread, how they would grow bigger, how the president would be compelled to invoke all sorts of different statutes to send out to bypass governors who would not cooperate, like Gavin Newsom, and also to send out regular military units. So I'm concerned that what we're seeing unfold right here is something that these people, anti-Trump plotters, have been, again, planning since at least January 2024, probably much earlier.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with almost everyone on your list. Mark Elias appeared at my trial on behalf of the Democrat National Committee and made a motion granted by the judge that the so-called CrowdStrikes memo, which allegedly proved that the Russian intelligence had hacked the DNC, not be released to my defense attorneys. He won that motion, not surprisingly. If you're just tuning in, folks, we're talking to Lee Smith. President Donald Trump said Lee Smith is a great American patriot who has understood that the threat from the beginning, the radical left, is the true threat to our democracy. That's what he said about Lee Smith. I urge you to get his new book, Disappearing the President. He also writes regularly for the Tablet magazine. He has a new piece up now that ties what we are seeing unfolding before our very eyes to this group of radicals. I think Lee and I both agree that the Russian collusion hoax is the greatest single dirty trick in American politics. It is an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the incredible capability of our intelligence agencies was utilized using two pieces of evidence that they knew from the beginning were fraudulent, the so-called Steele dossier, which is alleges that Donald Trump frolicked with Russian prostitutes when visiting Moscow as a private citizen. It was a total fraud, paid for by Hillary Clinton, whose campaign actually paid a fine for trying to disguise the payments for that document as legal fees rather than what they really were. And, of course, the false claim that the Russians hacked the DNC. This is a figment of John Brennan's imagination that they built an entire federal investigation around. Let me just ask you, you asked me this, let me ask you, how do you think President Trump is doing overall fighting these pernicious influences, both inside and, sadly, outside and, sadly, inside his own government?
Well, I think he's doing a terrific job, and I think that Secretary Hegseth over at the Pentagon is doing a great job too. And, there's been some issues over there, not due to the secretary himself, but there's been some people who appear to be leaking against them or trying to hurt him. So I'm just concerned looking at this particular operation since the Pentagon is part of the target. And this is how these people, they gamed it out. Their whole point was, and this is a very important thing, Roger, because I suspect that most of your listeners will be thinking that DOD, the uniformed military, is solidly red, solidly behind Donald Trump. And there's a lot of them, thank goodness, who are. But there's also a lot of people in there who owe their rank to the Democrats, and these people have been curated to become good blue Clinton, then Obama Democrats. And that's been going on for about 25 years. There's a number of different Washington institutions that take young officers, and the job is to turn them into Democrats. So, yeah, there are people over in that building who can cause a lot of trouble for the Trump administration and for Secretary Hegseth. So, but I think they've been very much on the ball, and they have the support of God-fearing, patriotic Americans who think it's a terrible thing that even if they don't love Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, think it's a terrible thing that our beautiful American cities are being turned into dangerous, squalid third world cesspools, and that this violence is a terrible thing. So that they know they have the support of Americans.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the fact that it is entirely outdated thinking to believe that there are people inside the upper, middle, and to a great extent even the lower levels of our military who are not leftists, not globalists. I mean, Barack Obama, over his 8 years, systematically retired. He promoted those who were globalists. He retired those who were just straight-ahead soldiers without any political beliefs, or anyone who, God forbid, leaned right or maybe revered the Constitution. So, and this is not just true, sadly, of our military, but Donald Trump is still dealing with a captive government. I mean, he may name the U.S. Attorney General, for example. He may even name the U.S. attorneys in a given jurisdiction, but everyone working below that interim U.S. attorney is a leftist Democrat activist or a careerist who is a Democrat posing as a civil servant. And turning around the government, it's like turning around an ocean liner. So let's take Kash Patel, who's both a friend of yours and a friend of mine, a very good man, I think uniquely qualified for the job of FBI director, largely because he not only served as a government prosecutor, he was the chief of staff of a major department, the Department of Defense, demonstrating he has the administrative experience. And he was, of course, the man who led the Russian collusion investigation for Congressman Devin Nunes, who was my first choice for vice president with Donald Trump. Not that I don't like J.D. Vance, but I was for...
That's right. I remember you saying that now. That was great. I think speaking to former Congressman Nunes, once he started seeing that groundswell of support, he was surprised and honored, and I think he wanted nothing to do with it. But I remember that now. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Well, I think he is uniquely qualified, and I'll tell you why. There are very few people who go to Washington for as long as he was there and rise to a powerful position, as he did as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who don't lose their souls. Devin Nunes is the same guy he was when he left for his first term for Congress. He's a patriot. He's a nationalist in the sense that he loves his country. He reveres the Constitution. You can't buy him if you're a lobbyist, so don't even try. He's a person of enormous integrity and common sense. Now, that's how John McCain was when he left for Washington as a member of the House. And look at the way he ended up. Yeah. No, I think he would have been a great vice president. Who knows? He may yet be a great vice president someday. Yeah. He's a relatively young man. But you make a larger point here, and that is there has been this kind of shadow operation that includes Norm Eisen and Andrew Weissman, also known as the single most corrupt prosecutor in U.S. history, along with Mary McCord and these others who are operating, I think, in violation of the Constitution and to abuse their power in the Biden administration, try to lock up Donald Trump, put him in jail, try to bankrupt him, try to keep him off the ballot in all 50 states. They call it lawfare, and they're right back to it. Norm Eisen, who has to be one of the most odious characters I've ever seen, bragging the other night on how many lawsuits that he's filed. So what they do is they go forum shopping. So they look for a jurisdiction that has a particularly left-wing activist judge, and then they go there with litigation, which has already been decided in other jurisdictions. So, for example, President Trump has the authority to return a violent, illegal immigrant to their home. He has that constitutional authority. Yeah. But in D.C., they try to tell him that he didn't. He has the authority to negotiate tariff deals with other nations. But the International Court of Trade in Manhattan, New York, that's a good one, Lee. I never even heard of them before. They popped up and said, no, he didn't. Now, ultimately, the courts have, when we get to the Supreme Court, in every case so far, the courts have ruled for the president. But all of this is designed to delay the president's success. And when you add it to the refusal by the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, who is acting politically to refuse to cut interest rates, even though the inflation rate today is almost exactly where it was when they cut them for Joe Biden, you see that what this is really about, which is to say, to stop Donald Trump's agenda, to derail, defund, or dismiss the fundamental changes the American people voted for in the last election.
It's terrible because look, I mean, of course there are political rivalries, there are political enemies, and I guess that's not surprising that people would target their enemies. But the fact is, look at how many American people are hurt by this. I mean, you're talking about refusing to lower the interest rates. I mean, there's young families who'd like to get a house, or someone needs a new car, or someone wants to get a used car. And, it just helped people out. And what we're talking about something even worse because of the violence involved in these protests. And look at these animals sending dangerous, violent people into the streets to hurt the Donald Trump agenda. How many Americans are going to get hurt by this? I mean, actually pay a physical price. Businesses are being destroyed. People are being threatened. It's just a terrible thing that they're doing. And it's really just more evidence that these people are effectively, if not in reality, communists, right? They're total disconcern for other Americans. It's just despicable.
All right, if you're just tuning in, folks, we're talking to Lee Smith, the New York Times bestselling author, and we'll be right back with more of his political observations. He kind of connecting the dots for us here in terms of who is funding this insurrection that's taking place in America. We'll be right back. And you're back in the Stone Zone. We're talking to Lee Smith, the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Plot Against the President. His latest book, even more disturbing, Disappearing the President, really a synopsis of the last several years of lawfare in which our constitutional system was bent, particularly in New York State. Remains to be seen whether Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, among those trying to derail Trump's reelection by prosecuting him under a law in which no one else has ever, in the history of the state, been prosecuting him specifically because she claimed that he inflated the value of his assets in order to obtain real estate loans that he paid back in full, and where those lending the money made $40 million in interest. Every one of them said they would do it again. The most bogus case I have ever seen. Lee, how's this all come out? In other words, I think that the president, I think he's got an incredible constitution, incredible energy, but the far left is really embedded here.
I mean, they're not giving up, and I think that understandably, Americans were so overjoyed that Donald Trump won in November, and we've been celebrating. We've been enjoying our liberation from forces of darkness. We feel that we're no longer at the edge of the abyss, and that's right. But we also have to keep in mind that this is it's a very short term. It can go by awfully quickly. And the people who've been targeting Donald Trump since 2015, since late 2015, are not going away. And that's what these protests are about, and that's what everything is about. And it's I think it's also very important to recognize that we flatter many of our neighbors and fellow Americans to say, well, look, now that things are back to normal, people can see that this is better than living in this madness as it was under Joe Biden. Well, again, we have to keep in mind that Kamala Harris got an awful lot of votes, and those people are still there. So I think it's urgent. It's important that we keep our heads up and see what's going on, because Donald Trump does need our support, our vigilance. Our country needs our support and our vigilance, because again, the people who have been targeting Trump for the last decade are not going to give up now. For them, it's going to get more urgent, more serious, and open borders is it's a crucial issue for them, just as it is for us, for normal Americans who think that, if you want to come into the country, you should do it legally. For them, it's very important. It's an electoral tool, right? This is an important part to try to bring these people, to try to bring a potential client base to recreate the electorate. It's very important for Democratic Party bosses. So they're going to be out there. This is what they're fighting for. It's not because they're kind people who want to give the world a chance to share in the American dream, even if it's illegal. They're looking at their own electoral fortune. That's why it's vital to them. They can't give this up. So this fight, what we're seeing unfolding now, is again another really is an existential battle, right? The future of America depends on Donald Trump winning, on America winning this particular fight over the people who are burning down American cities to get their way and to keep borders open. It's very serious.
I could not have said it better myself. I'm afraid we have to wrap it up there. I want to thank our guest, Elise Smith, and all of you who joined us today in the Stone Zone. God bless you and Godspeed.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Not just stepping stone.
The Stone Zone.
Not just stepping stone.
There are black beans, and then there are Goya black beans. Whole, plump, delicious, and loved by all kinds of chefs. The professional chefs at Chef's Best love them so much, they awarded our beans their Excellence Award. At Home Chefs love them so much, they awarded our beans the internationally acclaimed Goya black beans. Whole, plump, and oh so delicious. Find them in the Goya section of your local grocery store. If it's Goya, it has to be good.